Standing for first principles, that is the topic of tonight's byline. We've got messed up schools taking scoring out of kids' sports. Toronto declaring itself a sanctuary city for illegal immigrants. Now, at first glance, these things have little in common, but at their core, they do. Each of them is the result of governments overstepping their core responsibilities, of getting involved in things they shouldn't be involved in. I want to talk to you tonight about a first principle. This one, well, may seem lost on many people. It's been distorted by decades of Trudeau worship and the idea that Canada needs a strong central government. It's amazing to me that I meet people who will tell me, yeah, I'm a conservative. And then they go on about how Canada needs a strong central government, or we need to get rid of the provinces, or have Ottawa take over this or that responsibility from another level of government. Nothing could be further from the truth. We need less centralized government, less concentration, and more local decision making. Think about it. Should the federal government be dictating how your local minor sports league is run? Because that's what's happening, and that's the result of centralized control and central planning. What we need is a return to the principle of subsidiarity. Subsidiarity is the idea that any problem should best be dealt with at the lowest level of government possible. If I need my street fixed, does it make sense that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet should get involved, or does it make sense that I call City Hall? Of course I would call City Hall, but in so many areas we've got this all backwards. Take a look at schools and education. We've been talking all week about problems in education, and while some of these problems are the result of local school board decisions, like the no-zero policy in Edmonton, others, like the strange and bizarre ways that we teach reading and math across the country, well, that's the result of central planning departments setting up curriculum for entire provinces. School boards were the original form of democracy in much of Canada. Often, before there was a town, people would gather together and organize a school to educate the local children. Look at school boards now. Most of their powers have systematically been stripped away by parties of all stripes so that they're simply people that enact the wishes of nameless, faceless bureaucrats at the Ministry of Education. That's not how it should be. And then take a look at minor sports. Why is the head office of Sport Canada, part of Heritage Canada in Gatineau, Quebec, setting the competition policy for my local soccer or hockey league? Can you get more local than a kids' sports league? Yet if leagues don't sign up to the long-term athlete development program, then they can't be part of the provincial and national associations. They can't be part of tournaments. Well, that came from the feds. This makes about as much sense, the feds dictating local minor sports rules, as, well, having them come and fix the pothole in front of my house. Yet soon we won't have much choice. Conservatives have helped along this road of eliminating choice and competition in local decision-making. Here in Ontario, it was a supposed conservative, Mike Harris, who imposed municipal mergers on cities across the province, all in the name of efficiency. He thought there were too many politicians in the province, and you know what? He could have been right, but his solution concentrated power in the hands of fewer politicians and a lot of powerful bureaucrats. So now the suburban areas around Toronto are part of the larger city, and they have to agree with crazy ideas like the sanctuary city. That means illegal immigrants, well, and the city estimates there's 200,000 of those living inside their borders. Well, those people, those illegal immigrants who are breaking the law, now have access to city services. Same access as Canadian citizens and landed legal immigrants that followed the law to get here. Under this new policy, no city worker or police officer can refuse service or report the person for breaking the law. Do you think that people in the former suburbs really support this crazy downtown idea? I doubt it. Now, in case you've forgotten, immigration is a federal responsibility, and the feds, they're not too happy about this.
We think that's the wrong message to send. We think we should be sending the message that if you're here illegally, look, Canada is an open and generous country. All we ask is that you respect our laws. So if you're here illegally, please respect our laws and go back to your country. If you want to come back to Canada, get in the same line as everyone else.
So there you got it. We've got the feds running local issues like kids' sports. We've got the cities trying to run immigration and central bureaucrats running our schools. Meanwhile, you have no say, less choice, and you feel helpless. It doesn't have to be this way. We have a constitution that actually sets out provincial and federal responsibilities. It actually runs on a subsidiarity kind of way. We've got a sense of what a truly local service is. But we've got all these things mixed up to the point where every level of government is involved in every aspect of our lives, and no one is actually responsible for anything. The solution is to go back to first principles, peel away layers, get the cities out of federal areas, the feds out of local and provincial areas, and get the provinces to stick to their own knitting. Maybe then Canada will make sense again. And that's the byline.
Legal immigrants to Canada have very little tolerance for those who cut the queue and cheat the system.
Joining me now for further discussion of this is Sun News commentator and contributor at large, John Robson. And John, it seems like a wonkish discussion, and it is, subsidiarity. But the fact that we're not following this is at the root of so many problems.
Yeah, and I don't mean to puncture your blithe optimism, but when it comes to that pothole in front of your house, infrastructure by now is a blended responsibility of all three levels of government. Accountability, therefore, having entirely vanished. How do you know who's at fault? Oh, well, they didn't give us enough money. Well, they didn't give us the power to tax. Oh, we didn't get the grant for this. Ottawa hassling around with light rail and other such fatuities. And it's always, well, how much money can we get from the province? How much money can we get from the feds? So the federal government is right there in municipal planning.
But it shouldn't be.
Of course not.
And the fact is that I don't like politicians handing checks to each other, because there's always a bureaucrat that has to be paid along the way to process the check. And some people will say to me, well, it doesn't matter because there's only one taxpayer. Well, exactly, but you should pay taxes to the level of government providing the service, not pay taxes to the federal government to fix a pothole in Saskatoon when you live in Moncton.
Yeah, exactly. This is this idea that there's one taxpayer but three levels of government. Let us understand who is responsible for these decisions. And there's something, actually, my wife worked on this some time ago, a project to study the Chrétien government's infrastructure program. And one of the things they found is that accountability was absolutely lost, and I don't think entirely by accident, because three levels of government were involved, and everybody could say it wasn't me, it was them over there. They could all show up and cut a ribbon and say, haha, I'll take credit, but they'd never take the blame. And then you get things, you talk about the sports program, but this is ingrained everywhere, like the national salt strategy. How do you get from the idea that we're eating too much salt, which we probably are, to a national program? And I keep track of these, because politicians, like, we had a national getting hit on the head strategy at one point, or somebody wanted one, to head injuries. And if you say, well, that's a bad idea, oh, you're in favor of head injuries, you don't know how bad they are. That's not the point. The point is, where did you get the idea that people would be less likely to bang their heads if the federal government got involved in this? But it's everywhere. The Harper government now, one of its great new things is community infrastructure. They're forever putting out press releases that they're funding community infrastructure.
There's no point for that.
Well,
they shouldn't be involved. What is community infrastructure in the first place? What are they talking about? Infrastructure's roads and bridges, things like that. They're talking about arenas and parks, because some social scientist has told them these are the sinews of community. We're going to generate healthy communities by wise government intervention. We'll also get votes. Did we mention we'll get votes? But then they come and meddle in the life of a community. If a community wants an arena, why don't they tax local people for it? All right. Well, and we'll have to leave it there. We won't even have time to get onto the issue of immigration and the fact that the cities are messing that up. But we'll ask the audience what they think. John Robson, thanks so much. Does any of this make sense to you? Do you understand how your government works anymore? And do you think that the federal government should be letting the cities run immigration? Send me your thoughts. Byline @sunmedia.ca.